got it.
Awesome. All right, folks. Well, this is the bluegrass mandolin section, which I guess arguably all of the sections have been fairly bluegrass oriented, but I'm going to talk about some specific ways of approaching playing bluegrass on this class. I'm going to start. Let's see. Sorry, gallery. I'm going to start by playing a tune, and I'm going to just sing one because, as much as I love playing instrumentals, and that's, certainly a big part of what my band does. Sorry, let me double check one thing. My favorite thing to play is bluegrass vocal music. I don't necessarily love the sound of my own voice, but I just prefer I prefer playing vocal music. I prefer I just think it's funner to stretch out on vocal tunes. And let's see here, and and even my it all kind of spawns from the vocal music, as far as I'm concerned. So I'll play a little bit of "I'm Coming Back, but I Don't Know When." And I'll take some solos, I'll sing some, and you probably hear me do some different kinds of accompaniment. And then I'll kind of get into what I was doing, but I'll just play it to start. Road to find my fate or victory. Our God must help us there to win. I'm a coming back, but I don't know when. Gotta let Chris in here. When I return, will you be here? Or will your love fade like a rose? I should never come back to find you gone. My love for her, nobody knows. I'm going down this lonesome road to find my fate or victory. Our God must help us there to win. I'm a coming back, but I don't know when. See, I should have made sure everyone was here before playing that because I was forced to let people in while playing. Um, so that was a little bit of I'm coming back, but I don't know when. I think everyone's here. So yeah, on that, took some solos, did some singing, did some different kinds of accompaniment. I'm gonna get into each one of those things individually. But let's see here. I had a question from Chris, which kind of pertains to this, Chris Sutter, that I wanted to hit maybe right off the bat. He asked, when improvising, how do you make the decisions to do what you do? Do you have a thought process of things you'll try for each break, like in order, or does it just happen and you go with it? I really think by the time you're performing or jamming with folks or what have you, you're sort of stuck with the vocabulary you have. Meaning, like, yes, I have all of that when it comes to practicing, specific things I want to work on, specific techniques for taking a solo. Maybe it's double stops, maybe it's exploring a certain area of the neck, but all of that is sort of for the practice room. It's really necessary, or else you just kind of play the same old stuff every solo. But by the time you're doing even what I'm doing, which is playing solo for 12 people, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel of my own sort of vernacular. Like I'm stuck with what I've got, and it's just time for me to sort of speak with that. To answer Chris's question, like, yes, I have all that, but it's all for the practice room. By the time I'm on stage, or he recently saw me play with Bela, and certainly in that kind of situation where there's like high pressure, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm doing my best to not think. That sounds sort of cliche, but it's really true. Like the thinking kind of just sabotages you. And then out of that, some sort of thoughts on sorry. Like I said, I'm actively like trying to get out of my own head when I'm in most performance situations, almost all of them, but the tricks, there's everyone has their own philosophies for how to do that. Some things I like to do is focus on one person in the rhythm section. On the Bela gig sometimes. I'm just thinking about what's Brian playing, like what's the guitar doing, and locking up with him, and that has two effects of like, oh, you're really in tune with the rhythm section, so that's positive no matter what, and also it gets you out of your own head a little more. It's like, okay, when I'm taking solo, can I be actively paying attention to what he's doing, which is kind of counterintuitive because the intuitive reaction is to get sort of knuckle down, and it's all about you in that moment. And not only is that not the best way to be or the best way to play, but it doesn't actually, you end up playing worse. You're better off focusing on another person. With my band, a lot of the times, we play around one mic with no monitors. So it's a different kind of listening. It's not the super precise, like in-ear monitor type of listening that would be the case with Bela. It's a combination of listening to the house sound, because we have no monitors, and listening to our acoustic sound. So you have to listen a lot harder. It's not all, with the Bela stuff, it's more all right in your ears, and if anything, you're hearing it too well. With my band, it's like I'm looking for something to grasp onto, because sometimes it's perfect, but sometimes the for instance, the bass is echoing off the back of the room and it's coming back like a second later, and then you're having to play with this big delay. So I'm looking for one instrument to cue off of. Another thing, even when I'm playing solo like this, I might focus on, there's no rhythm section, obviously, but I might just play and only think about the time, like only think about the timing. If I were to do that, it's a subtle difference. It might not be a difference. Hopefully I'm always thinking about the time, but that was me like really not thinking about the notes when I'm playing. I was just really trying to think that nice propulsive sort of timing. So anyway, I'm trying to get out of my own way when I'm in a performance setting, and just thinking about the timing, I might then not think about the notes as much. The notes are one of the last things I think about, to be honest. I'm much more likely to think about what someone else in the room is doing, you know, what I'm going to have for lunch. I mean, the timing. I mean, countless things before the notes. I mean, the notes are the thing you're pretty stuck with at that point. Like you play how you play, and you're not going to. We've all heard the sound of someone going along playing their normal stuff, and then all of a sudden they shoehorn some like hot lick they learned in, and that's fine. We all have to figure out how to like incorporate new vocabulary. But when someone does that in a jam or on a gig or something, it's like it's not the type of playing I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to actively like ram new vocabulary that I don't own yet into my playing. So I'm sort of just trying to speak the language I have. Um, so some strategies though. So all that said, strategies for developing vocabulary, which the whole question of like what to play. Um, there's a lot of different approaches. I mean, transcribing is something that I've done a lot of, note for note learning what another player on your instrument or on a different instrument has done. I love that app, The Amazing Slowdowner. I think I mentioned that yesterday, but highly recommend that. You can change the pitch, change the speed. It just makes it a little easier to transcribe. When I transcribe, I don't tend to write it out because you can get it looking all nice and get it, maybe perfectly transcribed and then never learn it. And that's not to say it doesn't do anything. Like you still worked your ear, but I'm really trying to like when I transcribe, learn the solo or the tune or the lick, vocabulary, and play it so much that I would not need it written out. I want to play it. You have to play something so much in order for it to start coming out as your own language. So for that reason, I don't tend to write it out. By the time I have it learned, it's usually memorized. Um, when I was a kid, the first stuff I transcribed was Ronnie McCurry, um, and he was my first really big hero. Still a huge hero, and it was so hard. It was like pulling teeth. I remember the first solo I did. Not an easy place to start, but "Love Is a Long Road," this Tom Petty tune that Dell does, super fast in B, and I just loved the mandolin solo. And I remember learning that, and it was such a revelation to learn it. And it also like took me forever because once if you know the whole fretboard and you've transcribed a lot, you can kind of intuit and make some really good guesses of where someone's at, what they might be doing. But at that point, I was shooting in the dark. But I mean, it was all the better because of that, because it took me so long to learn it. It was so hard. But then I got so much better just through learning that one solo. So I would focus on transcribing. Don't worry if it takes you a couple weeks to get a solo. I mean, it's one of those things that kind of back to some of the stuff I was saying yesterday. It's easy to like be like, man, this is one solo. Is it worth spending 2 weeks on it? I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Like currently I'm working on this Charlie Parker solo, and I've worked on a lot of, kind of jazz solos, and it's like, man, it doesn't matter how long this takes. Like if I'm able to get this where I can execute it and sound, as fluid as him, which I probably never will, but to even shoot for that, I'm going to get so much better. So, pick a solo to learn that you really love and work on it just till you live and breathe it. And don't worry about it if it's like, it might be 9 seconds of music, but it can still change your playing.
Hey, Jake, here's a question for you. So I do transcribing, and I always write it.
Yeah.
So, and I always find solo mandolinists off of YouTube. So I can see it and hear it. I slow it down. It could be 100 measures. So do you then memorize that 100 measures? Is that what is that?
Yeah, I mean, well,
and would you approach that without writing it down? And so you'd like memorize it as you're transcribing it so that at the end of the day, which could be a couple of weeks, that's a hell of an effort without writing it down.
Yeah, I mean, well, think about it this way. I mean, you're not going to be, if you don't have it memorized, you're not going to be playing it at tempo. I mean, I don't know what it is, but most bluegrass stuff, unless it's like a waltz or something slow, maybe, and you happen to be particularly good at reading tab, for the most part, you're not going to be playing something at speed if it's not memorized anyway.
Right.
I mean, even like classical musicians, memorize their stuff when it's like a concerto and stuff. Because to play something like that, you've played it so many times that it's like it's a huge insurmountable task. If it's like you say, however many 100 measures. Well, I mean, 10 measures of that, if it's assuming you're picking some quality stuff, which I'm sure you are, 10 measures of stuff, it's still going to do you a lot of good, even if that's all you get. You can learn a solo and play it right and still not play it enough to really have it be absorbed in your vocabulary. So the idea that you could get that from it from not even memorizing it isn't very realistic. That doesn't mean that, like, as an ear exercise, I've written out solos that I didn't learn, and it was valuable for my ear. Maybe I learned pieces of them, but in terms of what I'm saying is the amount you have to play a new piece of new material, maybe it's 2 bars, to have that actually be absorbed into your playing is so many times that at that point, the memorizing is going to be kind of the least of your worries. I mean, just, as an example, I mean, I've done, when I had a Patreon, my ill-fated Patreon, before I realized I was like the worst at running a Patreon of anyone ever. I'm like a reverse David Benedict. I uploaded like a 17-page Kenny Kirkland, who's like a modern jazz piano player solo, 17-page Kenny Kirkland solo, like tabbed out for mandolin, which was useless on many levels. Like, it was kind of fun to see, I thought, but as multiple people pointed out, anyone who could possibly learn and play this could transcribe it just as easily. But I mean, I could play the whole thing, all 17 pages without even thinking about it, because the amount of work, and I had to get to, or I should say, it was all memorized, because the amount of work I had to get to work to be so I could play that. I mean, I had played each phrase 1,000,000 times, or probably actually 1,000 times, So that's my whole point.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I've gone through stretches just because I think I liked to have like transcribed all these Bill Evans piano player solos, and I was doing it all without my mandolin, and I was doing it all writing it in notation. And I was definitely getting something out of that. Like, I was getting better at writing notation. I was working my ears, but it's a different type of thing. It's also kind of a fun, nice thing to have this nice looking piece of music. It's like very material, it's something you got done. But just, I would say, don't let it distract you from, if the goal is to influence your playing, the best way is going to be to just play it so many times and know it backwards and forwards. So transcribing. Now, sort of along the same lines, taking bits of things you transcribe. I mean, it can be a bar, I was talking about that sort of like second position A lick. I don't remember what it was, but like, it was something like that I learned from some Thiele thing. And it's like taking a little snippet like that, playing it in a bunch of keys, playing in a bunch of positions, and then also, even if you don't play in other keys and other positions, shoehorning it into your own playing, sort of the very thing I said you shouldn't do. In the practice room, that's a great strategy. Like, for me, back before I had any bebop language, I might have transcribed something that's like, something that's very bebop-y like that. And I would shoehorn that into my improvising. I would be going along, doing my own thing. I don't know what I sounded like back then, but then it would be like however many bars of my improvising, and then I would go straight into that and back into my improvising and put it in tunes. What I would do as a kid, I would write solos, because it's kind of I would learn Ronnie McCurry solos, and it was literally like some sort of fantasy thing. I would pretend I was Ronnie McCurry. It's actually funny. I remember as like a little 10-year-old homeschooler, I would like every morning I would listen to this Del McCurry band record, and then I would this one tune would arrive, and I would run into my room, like charge in my room, get my mandolin, and try to have it out in time for the mandolin solo. And then I would just play along with the record. I don't know why I was doing this, but it was like, it comes from that place of like, you're actually pretending you are someone. And that's sort of maybe a good approach for transcribing if you're really trying to get a lot out of it. I was trying to sound like Ronnie. Now it's like when I learn a Charlie Parker solo, I'm trying to sound like him. I mean, I'm not going to, because he's playing the alto saxophone, but I'm really trying to, part of it I think is, like, a good example is my great friend Alex Hargraves, one of the best fillers in the world. He's incredible at playing like any style. And another thing he's incredible at is doing impressions, like impressions of musicians. Like his David Grusin impression on the mandolin is way better than mine. I've seen him do impressions of, Daryl Anger on I mean, just so good at like channeling the personality of someone and has such a natural instinct for their vocabulary is doing an impression. And as long as that, you don't get out of hand with it where you're actively always just trying to sound like one guy, then it's a great thing. The danger is only, I think, when you only listen to one person and they play your instrument and you're basically just trying to be them, which I see that a lot with Thiele and mandolin players, because it's like, he's such a strong flavor and he's so amazing, and then he becomes the only person that certain people listen to, and then there's a danger in that, I think. But he's incredible. So yeah, writing solos is something I would do. So and I still do it sometimes. I used to, as a kid, I would write them to actually play on stage, like with my dad and the band I was in. Like I would write a solo that's like what I perceived as being a higher level vocabulary than what that are a higher level, I think, in my mind. It's somewhat subjective, but a high technical, who knows what, higher level than I can improvise, and I work on executing those. And as a kid, like I said, I would do that, and then I would play those on stage. It can still be nice if it's a pressure situation to have something worked out. Improvisation is kind of at the heart of most projects I'm a part of these days. So like with my band, I never played solos that I've written out. That's all, it's all improvised, because that's sort of the whole point, But certainly there's precedent in bluegrass for like, plenty of bluegrass bands, they actually do play the same solos every night, and there's nothing wrong with that, So writing solos, and what you can do is you can like transcribe a cool lick you like, a cool phrase, play it 5 million times, and then put it in a solo. You like figure out how to make it fit in a solo of some sort. And and do the same thing in other keys. Let's see here. Julie, I saw that question in the email. I'm going to definitely get to that. Let's see here. So still the question of what to play. Transcribing, coming up with your own phrases. You might have ideas for lick.
Jacob, you're freezing up.
Through a major scale. So
freezing up on my end. I don't know if anyone else is getting that too.
Yeah, same, unfortunately.
Am I frozen? Yeah. Oh shoot. Is it any better yet? I'll give it a second. Oh, my phone's already on airplane mode. Is it still frozen?
Mostly.
It is.
I want to say my extra profound stuff. Oh, that's a shame. That's weird. Well, I guess is it any better yet?
Your voice is coming through okay right now. The picture's a little blurry, but
picture's a little blurry.
This might be as good as it gets.
Right.
We can see your frets, so we know what fret you're on.
Was it like this in the last class?
No, there was like
Funny,
one time last class, but it went away.
Occasionally it was on my end. The people speaking actually look much more clear than you do, Jake.
Weird. Okay. Well, my apologies. It's funny. The internet's pretty good down here, but I guess I'll just continue and hope that you say the audio is coming through okay. Yeah. Let me know if it keeps on being real bad. And
audio is coming through all right for the most part. There's some lag there too, here and there, but I think we can all get the gist of what you're saying.
Okay. I'll charge ahead, and if it gets real bad, let me know. It's kind of hard to know what else to do. So I was about to launch into talking about some patterns, and then show how you can, use those. So, and I did a lot of this, as a kid. I distinctly remember my dad actually writing some of these very patterns out. So one good one is like up in descending thirds. So. You're all welcome to play along, maybe stay muted, but. And then down descending thirds, something like this. And that's something you'll hear little pieces of in fiddle tunes. And, if you do that kind of thing all the time, like arpeggios and scales, it can make your improvising sound a little too mechanical. But I'll show you, but it's on the trajectory towards sounding more like music from those. In the context of, I'm coming back, but I don't know when, if I use a little bit of that pattern. So I started, almost every phrase with an ascending or descending version. You'll notice that, I guess the artfulness is figuring out ways of ending it and getting into something else. This is something I've noticed because it is sort of this ephemeral thing. Like, what do you play? What are the great bluegrass improvisers playing? When I listen to some of my buddies play, I do hear things like that. I'll hear a pattern, but then they, too much of that pattern, and it doesn't sound like music anymore. It just sounds, but enough of it, and then going into something else, ending differently, and all of a sudden it's musical. What you might mess around with is like playing the melody and then going into a pattern like that, and then back into the melody. I'll show you what that sounds like. And some of what you do, it's not going to sound great. It's going to be like, okay, it didn't really work that well there. But this is yet again kind of what we do in the practice room. You practice taking a pattern like that, the ascending thirds, and putting it together with stuff you already know, like the melody of the tune. There's other patterns. You could do something. This is one I used to do. So on and so forth. That's one you've definitely heard before. Like the descending version being. Like I'm thinking of the second part of Arkansas Traveler has that kind of pattern. So you can see, like, that's kind of what's happening in a lot of fiddle tunes, is there will be a bit of a pattern and then something else. What that something else is, hopefully we'll get to that too. But sort of this approach that I'm trying to hint at is taking material you already know, that can be the melody, that can be the vocabulary you already have, and in the context of a tune, shoehorning some sort of pattern like that in. And, in the practice room, you can do that a bunch. Try it all over the neck, try it a million different ways. You don't need to worry about hitting it out of the park every time. These days when I'm practicing it's like more jazz oriented harmonic things, I'll have one harmonic thing and I'll just do it over and over. I'll do it every single change. And it's not on its own yet. That's not great music. But the idea being kind of like the approach with transcribing a lick, you have to do it so many times for this to become part of your vocabulary. So patterns, is it any better yet, the connection? Oh, it is? Oh, that's great.
Yep.
It's funny. On mine, it's fine. So I'm totally just guessing. All right. You guys just let me have it. Do 8 hours of teaching. It's just horrible the whole time. And just stick with it because everyone's a good sport. Hopefully that's not the case. One other strategy I'd like to throw out, and Julie, wherever Julie is, oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to get into the double stop question. I haven't forgotten about you. Harkening back to what we were talking about yesterday when it comes to getting to know the fretboard, without any sort of arpeggio or scalar knowledge, one thing you can do is just toss yourself into the area of the fretboard and limit yourself. Like, it's kind of the way I think about a lot of practicing is you come up with parameters that you learn to meet. And now that sounds sort of limiting and unfun, but the reality of that is then when you go to play and improvise with other people, you're way less limited because you've worked on meeting different parameters. Alternative being, if you just mess around all the time and kind of play your own stuff, you walk out and play with people with the exact same set of limitations you always have. But that's the whole idea of these parameters. So one being, say for the same tune, what if I just play in third position? There was already stuff, just even doing this sort of under pressure, there was already some stuff in there that I had never played because I don't tend to limit myself to third position. So it's like you might be surprised with what you already know if you force yourself to not play the stuff you definitely know, if that makes any sense. It's sort of necessity, inventions, father of necessity, whatever, you guys know what I'm saying. So articulate. What if I do the same thing and I do it in sixth position? It's up there. It has this added thing of, it's like, I'm not as familiar with it. I mean, I'm fairly familiar with it at this point, but I'm not as familiar with it. And it's just technically more difficult because right now my action's kind of high up there. The frets are closer together. Trust me, if you say you make yourself take 20 choruses over, I'm coming back, but I don't know when, in sixth position. And then you're going to go back into first position or open up your options again, and you're going to have a bunch of new ideas. So limit yourself to positions. You can make it even more limited. You could limit yourself to one position, only 2 strings. I could do that in first position, but just use the 2 low strings. Funny, every single one of these I've done, I've liked better than the ones I did when I was just improvising with my own vocabulary, because it's just something new, And if I did 10 of those, then all of a sudden there'd be some cool lower vocabulary come out the next time I improvise, probably. So some thoughts on that. I want to see. get into talk about rhythm playing a bit here, because rhythm playing is most of what any of us do, and many more gigs are lost or won on your rhythm playing than on any kind of hot lead playing. It doesn't matter how so great someone is at playing lead if when they go to play backup, you don't enjoy playing with them. You know what I mean? Like if people, want to feel comfortable with the rhythm section, and if you're playing too loud or rushing all over the place or just not paying attention, that's the worst one, and probably the most common is just people, you tune back in for your solo, maybe you sing a verse or something, sing some harmony, but like not fully paying attention when you're playing rhythm. And my favorite players, thinking my buddy Alex, Bela, Brian Sutton, I mean, these people are doing so much on rhythm. Sometimes what they're doing is the absence of doing a lot. They're backing off so much. It's really what makes the music come alive, is people paying a lot of attention on rhythm. One thing I do a lot, let's see, what do I want to hit first, is play along with records. And I'm gonna put on a record here and play along for a second. When you think of mandolin and bluegrass, most of us think about chopping, which you do a lot. I would say these days in certain bluegrass styles, it's like the only thing mandolin players do, which I also don't think is my favorite. I like, if you watch, say, Ronnie McCurry or David Grisman, there's some chopping of various types. Sometimes it's like a more subdivided chop, like sometimes it's a sparser chop, meaning just 2 and 4, with maybe little fills, like I don't know what to call that other than it's like a little fill that's sort of a little lift to mark a transition. Anyhow, there's that type of chop. There's a sort of a Sam Bush, like really subdivided chop, like not to mention his like halftime chop, which I can't do it justice, but is basically like just to go over a couple other things. I mean, I like the sound of some strumming / shuffling on double stops, and also it's kind of where the two blend together. When I played duo with my buddy Michael Daves, I do chop sometimes, but there's a lot of space because there's only 2 of us, and a lot of times I'm just going to be playing on the bottom 2 or 3 strings to try to get out of the way of the guitar because I'm so high up on the mandolin. So I'll be doing stuff like or strumming. Stuff, it's all pretty bluegrassy sounding, but I'm not chopping. That doesn't mean I never chop with them, but it's an example of a place where I will do a bunch of stuff that's not chopping. I'm gonna put on playing with records. I mean, I can't stress enough for working on myriad things. What I like to do is load here's I'm on my way back to the old home. Oh, this is a bit, moving along at a good clip. Having I don't remember if I mentioned this on the right-hand technique section, but having a fast playlist, like a playlist of fast bluegrass that you can just kind of charge through one tune after another. Great way to work on just living there. But another thing, if you throw it into the amazing slowdowner, I could move this down to a little bit slower. Still sounds pretty good.
Back in the days of
Is that coming through okay? Sweet. I'm going to play along just for a second. I want you to listen for, I'm going to do some chopping, straight chopping, some more subdivided chopping, some filling. I want you to hear the variety of things that might happen here. Oh, and by the way, this is 86% of the regular tempo. Tune, but that's a great way to practice your various things, and that's really pretty realistic as to what I might be playing, in an actual bluegrass jam or on a bluegrass gig. There's a lot of like I'm chopping, but then as it's coming to the end of the form, I might fill it in. It's this kind of propulsive thing where when you're playing rhythm in a bluegrass context, you're almost always lighting up when you're playing behind the vocals, and then surging, not tempo wise but volume wise in between the phrases. And it's a pretty subtle thing, and then sometimes not so subtle. Not so subtle being like a lot of times, especially the more old school folks playing around one mic, multiple musicians might stop during the chorus when the trio comes in, because it's like the 3-part harmony is the focus. And you'll see so often like the banjo player will stop, if it's Earl or JD, will stop playing. Sometimes the mandolin player does too. I mean, it's particularly common in more old school bluegrass, but any good bluegrass band, it's like backing off behind the vocals and then filling it in and sort of dynamically surging in the gaps. So let's see here. Let me pull my list of stuff to hit back up. I want to go through, just because there's inevitably a variety of levels of folks here, just through my basic sort of breakdown of how the chop happens, and sort of depending on how much of that you've done, a good way to work on it. The sort of rudiment for what the chop is based around, for developing a good chop motion. Mind you, a lot of this is going to be also for the purpose of avoiding that sort of laggy upstroke thing that I talked about in the last section. You will hear this too. Sometimes mandolin players doing that sort of Mumford guitar rhythm thing, where it's sort of they're lagging on the chop, and it sounds something like this. And it's funny because that little up thing is totally fine once in a while, but what's happening is the exact same thing of not resetting the hand quick enough. And so the way to avoid that being your pattern when you play rhythm, take an open G chord. If you start with just a basic bass strum motion, like you might play in bluegrass rhythm guitar. So it's literally going to be like the low string and then a strum, and that sounds like this. When you're first doing that, or really anytime you're doing that, but don't do any up strumming. It's all about the downs. So we're dealing with 4 quarter notes, bass strum, bass strum. purpose of this exercise, it's really important to not do any upstrumming. It's all about, because the thing about it is, if you're successfully playing each one of those notes with a down, you are resetting the hand. There's an up motion happening between each down. It's just, it's physical reality. Now to continue to sort of evolve that from being a strum to being the chop, you can do the same thing, but use a closed chord. So still bass strum. That's sort of the next step in the evolution. The next thing after that is to start making those 2s and 4s, the offbeat, staccato. And that's purely a left-hand thing. Well, when I was a little kid, I couldn't quite reach the chop chord, so I would mute with my right hand. Someone asked me last time if I was muting with my right hand. When I was a little kid, I would mute it like that, because that was the only way, because I couldn't reach the chord. But it seems like everyone can reach a full chord. So making that staccato is a left-hand maneuver. And probably a good amount of you have a handle on this, but to get a chop sound, just try one hit. So basically you're strumming the chop chord and releasing the pressure in the left hand just after you hit it in the right. And you can adjust the length. Some chops are really staccato. Some chops are a little more elongated. But it's all a matter of how soon you release the tension in the left hand. And that's totally your own taste, own discretion, just depends on the setting. Now, if we incorporate that into this bass strum thing, it sounds like this. Now, if you were to hear me chopping on a bluegrass tune, the reality is I've never taken that bass out. It's always there. It's not as pronounced as this, because that still kind of sounds like a guitar rhythm. But even when I'm going along really fast, like that, it's in there. I'm ghosting that bass note. And the important thing about that is coming back up for that bass note is resetting your hand. So that's why the perfect chop motion spawns out of the bass strum motion. And now that I've sort of broken that down, pay attention when you see guys like Ronnie McCurry. At an incredibly fast speed, I might take out the subdivision, but not really. I mean, it would be, and the way that would sound would be like, and you can tell, like, even it's a subtle thing, but having that ghost note in there makes it so much more groovy. A lot of this stuff for rhythm playing and for lead playing in bluegrass, it's all about the propulsiveness, because if you're a part of a bluegrass band, you're each one of you one drum of a drum kit, so not like in rock and roll or in jazz where you might all be tuning into the drums. Instead, you are part of the drums. And that's why so much of the technique involved for playing mandolin, and playing bluegrass mandolin at least, is about keeping this propulsive right hand. Goes for the lead playing, goes for the rhythm playing. So that's the breakdown of just how to make the chop happen. Let's see what time we're at here. Okay, good. Yeah, so I want to demonstrate too another thing that you should do. I started doing this with the recording. Filling, is another big thing we do as, play backup. It's probably a little more common that the fiddler and the banjo player, at least at this day and age, it's more common that they fill. A lot of times the banjo player is going to be rolling no matter what, and then the fiddle or the mandolin or dobro fills over top of that rolling. It sounds like a lot to be going on all at once, but when it's great players, it's amazing how good it sounds. Michael Cleveland, who did some of the runs with Bela, he's just one of the most sort of grounded, tried and true like bluegrass fiddlers, and he'll play eighth note runs behind other people's solos, and it still sounds great. It doesn't sound distracting, it just sounds like idiomatic. So if it's the right notes and it's being delivered with great timing, you know, a lot of things can be going on all at once. So I'm gonna do a little bit of filling, and I want you to pay attention to, like, when I play fills, there's a couple different ways to approach it. One, and I think of this as sort of being a really old school bluegrass way, is to be filling almost like a solo over top of the singing. And then the other way would be to strictly hit the gaps. So it's like the reverse of where the singing is happening, you fill. And I'll sort of show that. So I'm going to start with that one. If I did that for an hour and a half set, you know, it would be unlikely that I would get called the next week, because that's a little intense. But that's the very basic idea, is that, there's no, this is one of the real demarcators of like good bluegrass bands from great bluegrass bands, or good bluegrass bands from bad bluegrass bands, at least, is the intentionality with the backup. You know, there's a lot of room between lines. Now, just to give you an example, you also will hear stuff like this. And now this is really in your face. And if used poorly, you really should not be expecting to get the call the next week, but something like this. That's like literally, it almost seems like playing a solo over it, but it's surprising. You pay attention to this, you hear like fiddlers that will basically do this, and it's almost more thinking about the eighth note flow as like a banjo roll or something, where it's less about the individual notes. It's like a texture happening below the vocals. So that is totally a possibility too. You know, in both of these cases, it's tough to be you have to do it confidently, but you have to definitely be paying attention to if anyone else is filling. And that's another, like I said, in a good bluegrass band, people are not only keeping an eye out for who's taking the next solo and who's going to sing what harmony part, but keeping an eye out for who is playing fills. And it's one of the most frustrating things on certain pickup bluegrass gigs I've been on, is when such and such just doesn't pay attention to if other people are playing fills. As far as I'm concerned, it's just as bad as stepping on someone's solo. It's to not be paying attention if someone else is filling. But it's one of the other things you do as an accompanist within bluegrass. I want to check out a question I just got here. Oh, good call. Fill over yourself when singing and playing solo. You can demo. Yeah, I'll try. So for like that first tune, I'm going down this lonesome road to find my fate or victory. Our God must help us there to win. I'm coming back, but on a win. When I return, will you be here, or will your love fade like a rose? You know, I can kind of do it, but it'd definitely be a good thing to work on. It's messing me up a little bit. And then there's Thiele, who's like plays like concertos while he sings, you know. But that's definitely not, it's definitely possible. It's not that hard, actually. It's a matter of, it's thinking ahead, basically. Shoot, it made me think of, one thing I wanted to point out that I was noticing when I was playing, just now, but also playing along with the recording. A lot of times if I'm filling and hitting the gaps, so going down this lonesome road to find my fate or victory, I'm shuffling on double stops in between. It's this thing of like, it's funny if I just play the fill and then totally stop, even in a band context. I mean, clearly if it was just me, but even in a band context, it almost brings more attention to it than if I shuffle. I'm sort of bringing the dynamics up and the amount of notes up, but I'm not really stopping in between. And that all boils down to the same thing of, each member of the band is sort of like one drum in the drum kit, So anyway, that was me doing my best, CK, to demonstrate that. It wasn't perfect. It's good for my singing more than anything. So I want to get into now some about, playing solos over tunes like this. I might go back to Paint the Town, similar, still in G. And I promise I'm about to do some double stop stuff. So a basic recipe for taking solos over bluegrass tunes. I think at the core of it, we need to all be able to hear hear where the melody's at. So like Paint the Town. And, in small doses, in the context of other things, playing it that way, meaning lyrically like that, could work. I'll try to give an example. And hearing it like that, it's like, man, I got to play more stuff like that. But it's no doubt sort of a departure from maybe the normal texture of more subdivision. So at the base level of taking a solo over tune like that, you got to be able to find those melody notes, and you can find them, in a lyrical sense like that, and follow your own memory of the I'm going honky tonkin', everything's turned upside down. Follow your memory of the melody or check out a recording. But it's safe to say that, that's probably not going to be the only thing you want to do when taking a solo over a tune like this. So a great place to start when it comes to incorporating more subdivision is a shuffle, which you hear fiddlers do. And you can do it on the mandolin. And I swear to God, it's the exact thing my dad started me doing when I first started playing. Now, this shuffle is a timing thing. It's quarter note, eighth, eighth, quarter note, eighth, eighth. And it's not only a timing thing, quarter note, eighth, eighth, it's also a picking thing. And so it's very important that we pick it down, down, up. Down, down, up. So not down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, but instead down, down, up, down, down, up. Reason being, it all comes back to that constant motion thing. If you think about this, if there's a bar of 4/4 time, 8/8 notes, if you picked every note, it would be down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Instead, we're taking out that second eighth note and the whatever 6/8 note. You don't need to think about it, but if you were to see it on a staff, it'd be like down, down, up, down, down, up. So where those two ups happen, we're not playing, but we resume as if we played it. So that maybe is me being a little long-winded about it, but the basic idea is down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. Everyone's welcome to play that along. Try moving it to different strings. Go to the A string. E string. D string. Now, if you've ever struggled with turning around your downs and ups, with Chris, obviously Chris Sutter, we were talking about completely reversing them, which is, a good exercise and also a worst case scenario in a lot of situations. But this is something you might see, or you might have noticed with yourself, getting your downs and your ups turned around. And for whatever reason, this pattern, quarter note, eighth, eighth, quarter note, eighth, eighth, is better for instilling good down and up technique than anything else that I've found. It's better than constant eighth notes. You would think constant eighth notes would be the best, but what it's really getting you in the habit of is your downs and your ups being attached to units of time. So, when we go down, down, up, an up motion occurred between those first two downs, just we didn't pick it, if that makes sense. Down, down, up. When I went down and I had to go down, up, I'm still doing an up motion to get there. That's just by nature. So and that's why, like when you see someone like Sam Bush, I use him as an example because his motion is super exaggerated. He might be playing a variety of rhythms, but to the naked eye, it just looks like he's going up and down the whole time. And also someone where the rhythm motion and the picking motion are very similar. But any of these guys, Ronnie too, he no matter what he's doing, he is for the most part, with the exception of sort of the aggressive bluesy Monroe playing, which is sort of its own ball game. With the exception of that, he's pretty much always adhering to this. The downbeats are down strokes, upbeats, upstrokes. Now, an example too might be if I'm playing like jazz, and which I played a little bit of bebop earlier today, but when I'm doing just upbeats, I'm using upstrokes. So like. Da, ba, 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 ba. Those are all upbeats, and I'm using upstrokes for them. And that's because my approach, even when I'm playing bebop, is to still do this downbeats, downstrokes, upbeats, upstrokes. So back to Paint the Town. First step would be to find that simple melody, and the next step is to put that melody into a shuffle. You might not know, maybe you're not at the point where you're playing blazing eighth notes through Paint the Town yet, but if you can find the melody, you can put a shuffle to it. Something about that shuffle, it's easier to speed it up than a lot of things. My buddy Stash Weislouch, who plays in my band, he'll play solos like that in a shuffle like that, and he just does it with such power and it's so groovy. You don't think, oh, why is he doing that silly shuffle the whole time? It just sounds badass when he does it. So it can sound really good. It's, it might sound a little mechanical right now when you hear the whole solo that way, but if I simply doing the shuffle and then putting like kind of a hot lick at the midpoint and a hot lick at the end, I don't think anyone's going to argue with that as being a good sounding break. So your blueprint for how to design solos on bluegrass tunes, find the simple melody and then play it with this shuffle and try it in the manner we talked about with the right hand technique, slow and legato and even and all that, and then throw yourself in. And that's pretty fast, but you might be surprised how quick you can make this shuffle happen. And I'm not sure what it is about the shuffle, but just trust me, it's a great pattern, and you'll feel good effects of it, even if you don't use it all the time. Okay, so now with this tune, we got the simple melody followed by the shuffle. Next stop, and finally we're there, Julia, is add some double stops. Now, as you guys have heard plenty of my playing in the last like 5 hours, but I use a lot of double stops. I just think it's a great sound. I think it's, Julie in her question, she talked about it being a fuller tone, a fuller sound. And it undoubtedly is. It's just louder too, about all of that stuff is double stops, I would have to listen back to my own solos, but I don't know what percentage of the time I'm playing double stops, but it's a lot, and that sound of like a double stop melody and then like a hot lick of some sort at the end. It doesn't need to be that hot, but like an eighth notey lick. That's just like such a tried and true blueprint for a bluegrass solo. So if I were to take this shuffle and add double stops, it would sound something like this. Speed it up a little. All of a sudden it's really starting to sound like a mandolin solo. And okay, so what double stops do you use? Well, at the end of the day, you could learn double stops like you learn scales or something. Some ways of doing them would be like in sixths. Or thirds. Oh shoot, gotta let Sammy back in. Thirds sound like this. And that's perfectly fine way to work on them. But I think the bang for your buck is a lot more if you just learn them in the context of the melody to a tune. Because, just like with practicing scales, they hardly ever occur like a whole string of them in a row like that, ascending or descending. So better to not even think about them as specific double stops. Think about them as your melody note plus an accompanying note. And that note and the accompanying note is going to be either above it, below it, or a unison. For instance, a lot of times you see mandolin players doing unisons on the open strings. That's just a common sound. It's just an attempt to be louder a lot of the times. So if that's the first phrase of Paint the Town in double stops, which it is, I'm sorry, not in double stops, in shuffle, let's see where we can add some double stops in. Now, this D note, really commonly, you might harmonize it. Even though that's the melody, you might bring in sort of the tenor. Bring this G note in. And a lot of times, for whatever reason, I think it's just a strength thing, I would maybe shift up and play that with my first and second finger. Now, the next couple notes, the connecting notes, I think of it a lot as sort of resting notes and connecting notes. These, I could do that in double stops, but more commonly I might play those on their own and then hit a double stop. See this melody note, this G, 5th fret on the D, I might bring in the low B, 4th fret on the G. So we have that's a pretty great sounding phrase. Now, in one case, we're harmonizing it with a note above, in another case, a note below. Now, how do you find these notes? I mean, I would honestly recommend you just sort of peck around and look for them. I mean, there's a logic to it. And just like with all our arpeggio and scalar knowledge, you're going to start to intuit it the more you do. But find that harmony note, you know? I don't think so. I don't think so. That sounds minor. That sounds good to me, you know? Similar. Maybe not the E. That's an option. That's like kind of bluesier. That's a major 7th sound. I don't think I really want that right there. There's my G note, and that sounds great. So, you know, because of the physicality of the instrument, there's only so many options. So you're looking for a note on one of the adjacent strings. So if I continue on, so these two connecting notes, and now we're into the C. Oh, sorry. Let's harmonize that with the E on the D string, 2nd fret. Notice that's the same shape as over on the G and the D we used for G. Just moved over one set of strings and back 2 frets. You might find that it's a little difficult to go from right into that. The thing is, you don't need to worry about getting there right away with the double stop. You can add it in. In that case, I played the C and then I added the note. Honestly, for me, a lot of this double stop work is also very tied into the sloppy thing I talked about in the last workshop of like, you know, maybe if you get your playing sort of a little more rooted in shuffles, continuous motion, double stops, thing like that, it's going to lead to a sort of an overall fluidity. And that's why I like just, you know, I'll come back to this, but like when I'm playing double stop stuff, I sometimes like to make it like almost goofily fluid, like. It's a pretty cool sound, and it's almost transcends the instrument in a certain way because it sounds so slidey. So it's a great sound, and it kind of feeds an overall sort of reckless abandon that I think is good for your technique.
All right, I missed where you were hitting a C on that second double stop.
Oh, sorry, Pike. Yeah, so C note, 3rd fret on the A string, and then we're harmonizing it with the 2nd fret of D.
Okay, thank you. It almost looked like an F chord to me when you were playing those 2 top strings. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, 3rd fret on the A and 2nd fret on the D.
Gotcha.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Jacob, what kind of practice have you done over time here to get that level of fluidity along the neck as you're playing double stops?
You know, honestly, a lot of it is the kind of stuff I was talking about not putting being in the right hand, but also not too much pressure. Yeah, in left and the under pressing thing. Am I frozen?
was gonna say, does that answer?
Yeah, we didn't get any of the answer. And if you can hear me, also
Don't forget.
Wait, say that again, Corey.
I was saying it was like in the movies where they say, "Don't forget to," and then it cut out.
Oh shoot, is it back now?
Here-
Yeah.
Yeah, now
Oh,
you are.
good, okay.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry, CK. I'm not hearing you. Oh, you're muted.
okay, sorry. Yeah, so it's like a two-part question. One's the fluidity, and one is just the fact that you're performing it in all positions all over the entire neck, right? So so
Yeah.
how did you practice your double stops in such a way that you're able to string them all together at such, at that full length back and forth? That's all. I guess that was what kind of practicing did you go through to do something like that?
That's a great question. So it really is tied into the sort of effortless thing. Because on the one hand, there's the analytical knowledge of where stuff is, but then there's the physicality of how do you get there and how do you make it smooth like that? Because at the end of the day, everything that I just did only sounds good. Well, to me, it sounds good, but to the degree it sounds good, it's because of the fluid execution. Because on paper, that would be something that's like, this might sound good or this might sound like crap with all the sliding. But that underpressing thing that I talked about with practicing in the left hand, really important for double stops because they're inherently more taxing. So, oh shoot, Sammy seems to have gotten kicked off. So, the actual slidey aspect, maybe just pick like 3 different double stops. Here's a good one. This major third, this minor third, but it's still part of the G triad, B and D. And then maybe this one, this D and G. So maybe just practice. Now, slower. See, notice how I'm barely pressing it down right now. A lot of what keeps people from being anywhere near that slidey and smooth is just they're hanging on too tight, quite literally. And a lot of that comes from fear of the other aspects of the neck, just general tension when playing. But that's why we sort of combat that by going the opposite direction, like totally giving up on making it sound good, just focusing on the motion. And for me, it came from that, from playing it so easily and then just sort of waiting for the moment. It's almost sort of a Zen thing when it starts to sound good again. And that's an interesting exercise. It's funny because it's a very subtle thing. It's like you have to be relaxed enough to be mobile, but yet obviously at some point you depress it enough so that it sounds. So that's a little, and you can do the same thing, say this. It's the same 3 shapes. Same type of, difficulty. That's one way to maybe tackle the physicality of the actual sliding thing. Then there's the thing of, to answer CK's question, just like, gotta be familiar enough with it. Like, for instance, that's where like the limiting yourself to one area of the neck and really flushing it out. That way, like when I go up to 6th position, it's not the first time I've been there. It's not the first time I've been there in the last, minute. So it's like, it comes down to that familiarity thing of like, maybe play double stop solos on this tune just in 6th position. Fifth position. So that was 6 and a little bit of 5th position because I couldn't resist. So it's like, okay, just like some of the other things I've been talking about, if I spent 10 minutes doing that, already I'm getting into stuff that I don't usually play. Each one of these parameters is that's why the parameters make practicing more exciting rather than less, is because you realize you actually know a bunch that you didn't know you knew. When you just play your normal shit, it's just, that's when it's boring for me. Anyway, so hopefully that kind of tackles it. I think it comes down to, at the end of the day, it's the familiarity with where it's at. So I'm not having to think about it too much. And then the physicality of not putting too much literally pressure, and also the psychological pressure to have it sound good. Maybe try really just practicing the 3 shapes just as they are, shapes, not depressing them at all. And just eventually, the notes start to emerge. It's interesting. I don't know how to say it any other way other than, if you listen for it, they'll start to come through. But you got to get that motion feeling nice and fluid first. For me, it's easier to take a fluid motion and have then the tone and the notes sort of spring from that than to have the notes be perfect, but I'm clenching it so tight, there's no chance it's ever going to get fluid. So anyway, I think I want to get back on the first position, paint the town. To make it sound musical over the chord changes. Sorry, where are you at, Adam? Oh, see, you don't have your camera on. I'm not sure if I totally know what you mean, but you mind just elaborating a little bit?
I just meant you're playing the double stops of a certain, like if you're A, but then if it changes to the 4 chord, you're obviously changing the double stops that you're playing. So how do you practice that, or is that just thinking ahead also?
It is, but at the end of the day, I'm not thinking about them so much as double stops. I mean, that's what they are, but I'm thinking about them as the melody plus an accompanying note. So that's sort of what's leading it, if that makes any sense. So, so yes, right there, we're on the 4 chord, we're on a C chord. And so I'm in the melody note is a C. So from a theoretical perspective, there's the 3 notes of a C triad, or C, E, and G. I'm already playing C, so I'm looking for either an E or a G. That said, sometimes I might go like this. That's a great sound. And that's where I'm like adding an A note and having it come down to the G. And it's basically a suspension. Fiddlers, pedal steel players, they do this kind of stuff all the time. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm not really thinking about it as like this shape and this shape and this shape. I'm thinking about it as a note, and then what can I bring in to harmonize that note. And another thing, actually, kind of back to what I was saying in regard to CK's question. A lot of what I do, I mean, this goes way beyond just double stops, but it's like, you're always averaging what are you capable of technically, and what do you know are possibilities. Now, like, not every possibility on the instrument am I going to be able to nail and play in a fluid manner. So a lot of times I'm going with stuff that fits well under my hands. Some of that is going to be, it fits better under my hands than yours. Other stuff's going to fit better under your hands than mine. But I am making a lot of choices on just like, what does the hand want to do? So that's part of it too, is I'm kind of not fighting it. That seems to be kind of an overarching thing, a part of my philosophy, but it's just, we're always searching for effortlessness. So back on this double stop melody. Oh shoot, I left one out. I noticed right there, I did that with my second finger, so I could easily slide into this double stop. I didn't notice that till just now, but. Now check this out. there, the melody is, and I'm harmonizing it just with that high G for both notes. So everything we have so far. Now that's the easiest double stop there is. It's actually like a 0 stop because it's the A, the melody note, and then the open D. Second half can start the same. I think of the melody as going up that time. And so, for instance, right there, you could argue that I should be doing that with my third and fourth, but I feel more strength in my first and second for that. That's I keep on coming back to CK's question, but it's like choosing to finger things, finger like double stops in ways that are gonna be easier. For instance, like almost everyone, the first two fingers are strong. First and second finger. I got my unstable connection. Am I frozen? Maybe not. Oh shoot. Oh, I'm freezing. Okay. Hopefully it stops soon. It's coming back at all? A little bit better. All right. Well, I'll hit this stuff a couple times. That was just a whole solo. For that phrase. See, that's me shifting up into third position for the melody. Because I like the double sound several times, but is making some of these calls based on where I can find the double stops and where they're frozen a bit. See a few blanks.
I'm getting that cool electronic dance music sound from you.
Oof. Sorry.
You're back now.
I think it's coming out of it.
Yeah, you're good.
All right, I'm so sorry, guys. I've never actually had internet problems here, so making do. You said it's good now? Okay. Well, all right, sweet. I was getting some epically blank looks because it's funny on my end, you guys all look great. But so I finished up that solo. I went up to third position. Because I like the double stop options up there. So, see, those are the melody notes, but I'm adding in this D note. Which, and that's the only place I can find that particular harmony. So, just to review a little bit, so our blueprint is basically, you find the lyrical melody, and that's where you're literally just following your ear and finding the melody, as simple as that. You know, we're just literally looking for the notes. Putting that into a shuffle is the next step. And then the next step is adding in double stops. Welcome to learn that exact break or something like it. And I'll just emphasize though, if you can keep to that shuffle, just try to learn at least one break where you're just doing that shuffle, and then practice throwing yourself in at the higher tempos. And you might be surprised at how easy it is to speed up. Something about that shuffle. Let me take a quick look at what I want to try to hit here. So now another approach to the like what to play question for bluegrass, I would say when I'm not doing double stop types of leads, I'm doing sort of a fiddle tuney approach to the bluegrass singing tunes. And I'll give you a little example of that. It's still, it's based around that melody. So having your lyrical melody and knowing exactly where that is, that's still kind of integral to this. But I'll give you an example of what it could sound like. It's basically like you're adding approach notes. You're adding notes around the melody that still highlight the melody notes. So I'm just, I'm improvising this, so I'll give it a shot. But it sounds like something like this. So, I think that still sounds like Paint the Town, hopefully. Or it also maybe sounds like 5 million other bluegrass tunes, but the gist is that I'm focusing on becomes so. Oh, shoot! I think it's about to. Says my connection is unstable. Hopefully not. Is it glitching out again?
It did for a second. It's back.
Oh, it's back. Okay. So finding that shape of the melody, and then like we did with double stops, where I said find like a harmonizing note. Instead, we're finding scalar notes above or below. And then da 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 da. You go. So basically, it's turning into a fiddle tune in terms of the vernacular. So then that gets into the realm of like when you hear someone playing some like pretty hot picking and playing a million notes, but they're, it's someone, super great like Stuart Duncan, like what is he playing? Well, he's still playing the melody. That's the thing. It's just that like his control over the melody is at a really high level. Like he's able to keep on playing Paint the Town, but he has like, a jillion different ways to vary it. And you don't need to have a jillion different ones. As I, just showed, like just playing a double stop melody is a great sound, Bill Monroe didn't have as many ways of playing a melody as Stuart Duncan, but he still sounded amazing. So, if you're peppering in growing your fiddle tune base, those types of line. You'll start to hear that kind of thing. Now, check this out. If I, this is a great sound. I'm gonna, a song that painted the town is 4 phrases. Da, 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 da. Next phrase, da, 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 so on and so forth. What can be cool is what if I rotate the 2 approaches? So double stop melody for a phrase, fiddle tuney melody for a phrase, double stop melody, fiddle tuney melody. That might sound like this. So that was double stop, fiddle tune, double stop, fiddle tune. Now check out the other way. So they, they're definitely can be practiced individually. In fact, I'd recommend practicing them on their own, but then you start putting them together like that. And then you're pretty much there. Like, if you're doing that well, yeah, you'll have so many gigs, you don't know what to do with. So work on each approach on its own, getting so you can play a whole melody in double stops, getting so you can play a whole melody as a fiddle tune, and then work on blending them together, phrase by phrase. Let's see here.
Hey Jake, can I ask maybe a dumb question? Or
No, of course.
Too
The dumber the better.
question to answer. One of my issues is I have trouble, like, if I try to play something more complicated, keeping the melody in my head and not hearing the new thing I'm trying to play. How do I keep the bass melody in my head even when I'm playing something more complicated? Like my brain wants to like override it and then I'll get lost. So that's the struggle I have.
Yeah. Chris, are you talking more like when you're out playing with folks or more like practicing at your house?
I think more when I'm practicing at my house is when I'm playing with other people, it's easier for me to hear everything else that's going on, so I can kind of hear where I'm at in the song better. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of the day, that sounds sort of like a form issue. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, you mean just like kind of keeping your place in the tune when you're playing stuff that's not just the melody?
Well, like if I'm, I'm playing along, like say I just want to vary from the melody.
Yeah.
And I try to keep the melody in my head, but I want to go a little bit, complicate it up a bit. And sometimes I get lost in that track. Like I'll just get lost in the complication and then I'll get too far away from the melody.
Right. Well, I mean, I think, it's a good thing to do when you're practicing. You're clearly like pushing yourself, if you're not getting lost a few times when you're practicing, probably not, doing it right. But, that's a good question. I mean, there's different things you could do. You could play along, you could make yourself a rhythm track, which would have some of the benefit of like playing with other people. And then at least you're sort of forced to adhere to those chords. Some of what I was doing in the last lesson or the last section where I record myself playing the chords and then play a solo and vice versa when I play back, that could kind of maybe work for tackling that issue.
Yeah, I was thinking that too when you're showing that.
Yeah. Also, I would say maybe the first couple times you do this, when you're like making it more complicated, maybe write a very specific solo that you can really take your time with and just basically figure out that, yes, in fact, like my dad wrote out solos for me, like ornamented melodies, he called them, that did sound, I'm sure, much like. Like I wasn't always able to just like kind of pull that stuff out of nowhere. Like, the first, when I played solos like that when I was like 10, I mean, not to say I wouldn't play now, but the ones I'm thinking of were ones my dad literally wrote out. Um, so like, to answer your question, I think, maybe come up as you're doing this stuff that's like more complicated, and which I choose to interpret just meaning like it's sort of like newer vocabulary, stuff that's harder, notier. Maybe write an actual kind of like an etude, an etude that fits over Paint the Town. Um,
Okay.
does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I do some of that now, like where I'll just write a variation, and when I write it, I can do it, but it's like, um, I don't know. Just one of the problems is though, if I learn the new thing I'm doing, I like kind of change the melody to the more complicated thing in my head, and then I can't uncomplicate it later. So
Yeah.
I can't get back down to the simple basic melody once I learn a more complicated version.
Yeah. Well, just keep on going in between the two, I don't know
All
any other way
right.
to say it really, it's just repetition at the end of the day. Yeah. I think, I like this comes back to the thing of like writing solos that I mentioned, like writing stuff that's too hard for me to come up with. I'm thinking there's this one specific tune of mine that I do with my group where it's a really strange solo section, a bunch of odd meter stuff. And in the studio, I wrote a solo to play, played note for note, because whatever, I didn't want to chance it. And I played it a million times. Now it's like ever since I recorded the tune, I can for it pretty easily. Even though it's a very my system so far has been just wait for a few seconds. Thumbs up.
Yeah, it's frozen up.
Still frozen. Still frozen. Shoot.
I can hear you again.
Oh, you can? Okay. Well, I'll keep talking, but I was talking about this this tune I wrote that had a solo that I played in the studio, and just through by virtue of writing this solo and playing it a million times, I became familiar with the form in a way I wouldn't have predicted. Where now I can play over this, I can improvise over this strange form. Oh, we're good. We're back. Nice. Who knows why it comes in and out like that? Um, by virtue of having written this solo that fit over these changes and these odd bars and stuff, I then am now able to improvise over it without thinking about it because I heard this new through line, sort of, Chris. So yeah, maybe put some of these more complicated ideas into like an etude and play that a bunch of times. And you said that's kind of what you're doing anyway, but I'm not sure if I helped.
No, it's good. It's good. I just yeah, continue to think about it. I think I just need to do more of that because I don't do it enough. So
Yeah. And in general, with this is 8 hours of me talking, so I'm hitting everyone with like a lot of things. But I want to reiterate too, like pick one or two things, either something I worked on or something you're on, because that's how like satisfying practice sessions is to come back to the same stuff, concrete progress. I wanted to delve in a little bit below, because to me that's a big a mandolin playing. Am I frozen again? Hopefully not. Okay. I'll play a little something. Thumbs down. Sorry guys. I'm gonna play a little bit of Kentucky double. Still frozen. Hey, Chris, can you hear me?
Yep.
Nothing. Oh, you can.
Yeah.
Wonder how hard it would be to restart the meeting. Oh, thumbs up? Okay. All right. Hopefully it'll keep up. I was about to start talking about some tremolo, because I see that as being a big part of bluegrass mandolin playing. Tremolo, and very tied in with double stops, because tremolo and double stops they go together a lot of the time. I'm just going to play a little bit for you real quick of Kentucky Waltz, one of my favorites. Hopefully the internet holds up. So that's a little bit of tremolo on Kentucky Waltz. You can kind of see how that might relate to everything we've been talking about sliding around with double stops. It's also a funny thing, kind of back on the right-hand technique subject. A lot of folks have a more fluid motion in the right hand when they're doing tremolo than when they're just playing eighth notes. And I don't know what that is, other than I think it comes back to that necessity thing of, like, you know, when you tremolo, it's like you don't have the option to play too slow. So you do what it takes to you know, make that quick subdivision happen. So working out a tune, it can be Kentucky Waltz or something else like that, where you're playing tremolo melody through the whole thing. Great way to tackle all this stuff. And, you know, the underpressing thing, if I hadn't worked on it that way, this would just be so taxing on the left hand. And for me, some of the little, like, more active sort of pedal steel sounding lines, like that kind of stuff, where I'm holding a note and moving another note, that's only really possible through having worked on this underpressing thing, where I'm really barely, you know, getting the notes, and then gradually you start to actually get more tone out of the notes, because relaxing your left hand, you find that perfect position for it, where you can depress the strings with hardly any. Because the idea is not that we want to play staccato and have it sound like that. The idea is that through fully relaxing the left hand, you can find, as opposed to being like, oh, press this note, now it's pressed, that's how it works. It's more like finding that perfect position for all aspects of the thumb and the hand, where holding down a note feels really easy. And it's a little different for everybody. And like long tones, tremolo you have to hold down, notes for a little longer, which actually builds strength, just as much or if not more than playing fast stuff. So that's just touching on tremolo. I also wanted to hit a little bit because I can't not of like Monroe-esque playing. I referenced it earlier as it's sort of its own thing, and I'm just gracing over the surface of it. There's a lot of players that are much more well versed in sort of Monroe style. It's kind of one of those things though, where like if you're a saxophone player, you've got to have learned some Charlie Parker. If you're a piano player, you have to have learned some Bach, or a violin player. But if you're a bluegrass piano player, you have to have learned some Bill Monroe. And that some of that's vocabulary, licks like that kind of a vibe, that kind of, it's sort of an attitude more than anything. A tune like Bluegrass Stomp, which you might have heard. That's one of my favorites to play. And the Monroe thing, in my opinion. Sorry, there's a question here. Yeah, I will. CK. It's both a vocabulary thing. Like there's some blues licks like that you can sort of incorporate. They do sort of, I'm not a big fan of the like soloing out of chord positions thing, but some of these licks are. I have no problem with it. It's just not something that I don't really think in those terms too much. But some of these licks are undoubtedly, they come right out of these shapes. So this one, that kind of a lick, everyone's welcome to play it along with. You'll notice that it's not just the notes of the chord, but your third finger's landing where your third finger is in that chord. Your second finger's starting. You can sort of easily relate it to that. You can take that same lick, move it towards your face, one set of string. Now move it up 2 frets. I might play a whole solo that's mostly that lick. Moving it around in the same way you move the G chop chord. Now, that's, it's sort of an arbitrary, there's a million variations. You could do this. Try that one. I'm using my pinky to slide 6 to 7. And I'm just adding a little triplet. Right there, I was alternate picking it, but a crucial aspect of sort of being able to convey some of this Monroe stuff is getting good at the all downstroke thing, other than the triplets. So I'm playing that all with downs until I get to that triplet. And like this lick, it's one of the most badass licks in all of bluegrass. And it's one of the weirdest too. Using my 4th finger to go basically from the 7th fret down to the 6th or the 5th. It's a kind of vague. And then with the 2nd into the 3rd finger. Super badass sounding lick. You can move that whole thing up 2 frets. That's, a very typical lick. Check out this lick. This is pretty Monroe sounding, though I think it's actually a Doyle Lawson lick. That's one you can play all downstroke, like in that kind of aggro sort of Chuck Berry kind of sound. Or you could play it faster. It works both ways. But honestly, you only need a few of those licks. The Monroe thing is as much an attitude thing as it is the actual vocabulary. For instance, like, you know, if I play over Bluegrass Stomp, watch, I'll play some stuff that's very much not Monroe, but it still has a Monroe vibe. So that's me playing some, you know, somewhat more out harmonic stuff, but it's more Monroe-y, in my opinion, than if you played these licks sort of daintily. It's less about the actual licks, and it's more about an attitude thing. And it's a lot about the physicality of the technique too, of being a lot of downstrokes. Yeah, like what I just played, that was all downstrokes except for the little triplets. And also, this is yet another thing that is musically, it's satisfying because it has that certain sound, sort of frantic Monroe-y type of sound. But it's also great for your technique. Like being able to do repeated downs quickly is beneficial, not in the same way as repeated ups, but it's a similar type of thing. It's going to make your normal, it's just going to improve your whole motion. Any questions about Monroe picking? At this point, I would take questions about anything too. I just hit you guys with a lot of information. Cool, well, let's see. Triplets. Oh, Corey, when you say triplets, just like you mean how to sort of how to incorporate them?
More so I don't know, like I was taught to do this like, and I've struggled to get those even and clean. I was wondering if you had any tips specific on that for a little.
Yeah. And are you doing that with like a hammer on or something?
Yeah, so like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, as long as you're doing it with a hammer on or a pull off, it's not going to be even in the same way because it's just simply the second note's not going to be as loud. It's still a great sound, you know, that kind of thing. Or like the Grisman type of licks, you know, like when he does that, it doesn't sound like picked wood, you know, but it's a great sound. So I guess one thing I've heard Thiele talk about when it comes to making the pull-off hammer-on sound even with the playing is actually playing lighter. So like, and then relative to the picked note, the note that's being hammered is louder. So that's one philosophy. I mean, if you really want it to be even, you want that sort of like the Irish triplet thing, like that for me is I'm picking all three notes, you know. And the what you do then because there's 3, so by nature it's going to throw you off of the grid. You know, if there's 8/8 notes in a bar and all of a sudden you have 3, what you do is you go down, up, down, and then resume on a down. And so the speed of it is tough, but the getting back on the grid is even tougher. So one triplet would be like down, up, down, down. That one particular one has the advantage of the 4th note being on a string closer to the ground, so you get the 2 downs in a row, you know. But even if it wasn't, you know, that's pretty much, as far as I can tell, most of those Irish tenor banjo players that do that, it looks to me like that's what they're doing, is down, up, down, down. Just like so many other things, it's, you know, throwing yourself in with the reckless abandon on it is a good approach, because it's a weird thing. It's really, some days, for me, it's like some days it's happening. Other days it just feels like my hands are completely glitching out when I try to do that. Let's see, there's some tune I'm trying to think. What is it? I was like a tune like that. And especially because my hands are a little tired right now. It's just like something. It's either happening or it's like really not happening. But that's yeah, down, up, down, down is how I'm doing it. For the hammer-on pull-off thing, I might just be more prone to just be okay with it being not as loud. If it's a sound you like, you know. To me, it always seems like Grisman, he's not really trying to fool people into it. It's more that it's just a different texture. Thiele's, to me, sound like, sometimes I can't even tell if he's picking it or if it's hammer-on pull-offs. You know, it's like he's able to play that evenly with it, which is really awesome too. Yeah.
Have you ever heard the guitar player John Doyle?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
I've been trying to make my triplets sound like that for like a decade and I can't get it quite there. I know it's down, up. I know it's down, up, down, down. I don't know if it's just timing or what, but, and then sometimes he sounds like he's almost like muffling the 2nd note of the triplet. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't quite figure it out, but someday.
Yeah, actually, you know who Seamus Egan is?
I've heard the name, yeah.
You know, he's in Solas. You know, John Doyle.
Oh, yeah.
He's the tenor banjo player. He actually, that's what he told me. Is he sometimes sort of mutes a couple of the notes. Like I won't necessarily be able to do it, but like that. It's a funny thing. For some reason, it just makes it that much more badass sounding. It's just like a little more percussive or something.
Yeah. And it's almost like the triplets sped up. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it comes back. I mean, not sped up, like get out of time, but it's like.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fast, you know, and I think, yeah, and it's also like jig picking. Like it's kind of you know, like when you play jigs, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, that kind of thing. It's funny, the fact that it's not just down ups, it makes it sound better. Like it's less smooth than if it was just down.
Yeah, I think that's what I like about it, is the not smoothness of just those triplets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally, absolutely. But it's tough, you know. It's tough, and yeah, they're tough for me for sure.
Thanks for spending some time on that.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, if there's any other questions, or I can let you guys go. It's I don't want to ignore any questions there might be though.
I'll throw one more question. So this goes back to the right hand stuff. And I know it's probably just I need to concentrate more when I feel it, but every once in a really long while, I'll be playing, like practicing with band or something, and like I feel the tension up on the top of my right arm to the point where it like hurts, and I can't even like, and I'm pretty sure it's just because I'm not like keeping my arm loose or something. And I notice it more if I'm in a situation where I can't hear myself very well. Maybe I'm like tensing up and trying to pick too hard.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure really what my question is, but that happens once in a long while. And then I actually like force myself to like really concentrate on keeping my arm loose. And that's the only thing I can think of is I'm like tensing up.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that would happen in a playing situation where you're having to play loud and stuff like that. I have, I've been really lucky that I haven't had like any hand problems, knock on wood. But I mean, I have like little pangs here and there, and just from the sheer amount that I play and stuff. If it goes away when you're practicing at home, that's probably a good sign. I do think that like, how tense you get is a habit like everything else. So like when you're on the gig, you can't do much to relax at that point. Like, because, when you're playing an instrument, it's inherently not totally relaxed, because if you were to relax, it would just be sitting on your lap. Like there are muscles involved. So anytime someone like, oh, to play faster, you just relax. It's like, no, it's not that easy. Like just relaxing, what do I do? We just stop playing, or put the instrument down, or, some of the things I talk about are to try to fool you kind of into doing that with the like under pressing and the being sloppier and stuff like that. But all that to say that the tension is kind of a muscle memory thing. So what I would say is at home, a couple things you could do. For one, just work on your general level of effortlessness while you play, because that's going to come across, it's going to come out when you're playing with others too. So if you can make it feel like falling off a log at home, then maybe when you go out and are playing through like adverse circumstance, a bad sound, you still might be more relaxed than if you hadn't done that. The other thing you can do is to try to recreate conditions from playing out and about. So maybe practice playing louder or harder. Maybe turn up the Bluetooth speaker you're playing along with the band and play with it louder and see what happens. That way you can maybe try to find a way of playing louder that's a little more ergonomic or something. I would say that just being aware of it is the best thing. Like which sounds like you already are. You've noticed that happens. In the moment, the only thing maybe you can do is stop for a little bit. I think though sometimes people I know like have hand problems and they stop playing, but they still do gigs, and so then they're not in shape because they haven't been practicing, and so then the hand problems get worse because once they're on the gig, the hands don't even have the normal muscle development they usually have. So not telling you to like play through, but I do think there's something to be said of like finding a way of playing that's effortless is more beneficial than stopping playing. If you stop and then you just go back to playing the way you were before, it's probably just going to come back. And like with several of my friends, it seems like it gets worse when they start taking breaks from playing.
Yeah,
so I don't want to.
Your analogy with going to the gym earlier was really good. I can't remember what it was for, but it's a similar thing, I think. Like you don't stop going to the gym just because you don't want to hurt yourself more, but you don't want to stop going either. So
yeah. I mean, I don't know. Everyone has to be their own judge. I think having a general awareness of tension when you're practicing at home, that's going to translate to good things when you're out and about. When you're out and about and you're performing, it's sort of too late to worry about it at that point. You can't do too much about it. So that's why like the more awareness you can have when you're at home practicing, doing things like I've talked about so much, jumping in at faster tempos than you usually play. That's all about seeing how the body reacts, which is kind of getting at the same thing too. If you play at 140 once a week in the jam, it's not going to feel great. But if you live there or toss yourself in once a day, it's more likely to sound good and feel good and not get injured from it. I mean, I know when I'm not a very athletic person, I wouldn't say, so it's surprising I used any gym analogies, but I did used to run all the time. And I went for like a year where I ran like every single day, and maybe I just got lucky that I didn't get injured. But I remember running, I had to have like knee pain for a while, and then I'd have foot pain and I have something else. And I just kind of kept on doing it because I'm kind of just, I guess, a masochist, or I just could not do it. And it was funny for me, that stuff tended to list like you sleep on it, it was better the next day, or sleep on it was better in a couple days. And it was, I'm just too hard-headed, I guess, to stop. And I've probably been a little that way with the mandolin. But I'm not trying to say that anyone who's had hand problems has just not been hardcore enough. But I just do think that quitting can have issues too, It's like, I think, for me, I'm sort of self-taught in a lot of regards. Like a lot of what I know about mandolin is like through my own, when I'm outlining these right hand and left hand strategies, they're basically ones I've come up with or someone's told me about it and I've tried. So for that reason, a lot of my own technique, it's just been built around what's effortless, what's an easy way to do something. Because a lot of the time it hasn't been anyone telling me you need to do it this way. And it's like, even if someone has, I've been like, but you don't sound that good, or it's copying the people whose sound I really like. And the rest of the time, it's just kind of trying to find a way that feels good, So something
Now
is,
that you mention it, it might have been after like a few week break from practicing too. So,
it's a couple bass player friends of mine I'm thinking of in particular that have had hand problems. It's like, then they take a couple weeks off and then we practice or something, or go to the studio, and it's like their hand problems are worse than ever because they've just been, that's a very muscular, that instrument takes some more muscle to play. But you can have hand problems on mandolin too, or typing or whatever. Yeah.
Jake, can you suggest any listening for us in lieu of the work we're doing over these 3 days?
Yeah, absolutely. I could put together a playlist, but I'll mention a couple things. I'll put together a playlist tomorrow to send around. But for, like I mentioned, coming up with your own like fast playlist. I could even design a fast playlist. Maybe I'll do that. A fast playlist, and maybe another one that's a little less obsessively about speed. But it's still about making music. The thing about playing fast bluegrass, I mean, anyone who's done it, it can just be fun. When it's happening, it can feel like you're floating. It's sort of like flying. And so in that way, I don't think it's about chops or sounding impressive. And it's more just about, it's experientially, it's a fun thing. Bluegrass album band, that's great stuff to play along with because it's like great quality recordings, very influential, higher quality of recording than like the Flat and Scruggs, Bill Monroe stuff, just in terms of sonically, it's higher quality, so it's maybe a little nicer to play along with. And those versions, people tend to base just as much off that. So I like playing along with Bluegrass album band. As a kid, I played along with tons of Del McCurry band, and they still probably have my favorite like groove, especially the Mike Bubb era in the like 90s when Mike Bubb was on bass. So Del McCurry band stuff, Bluegrass album band. I really liked Blue Highway. I'm sure I still would like them, but I haven't listened to them in a long time, but they're great. I'll put together some playlists. That's a great idea. I'll try to have them together before the session tomorrow. Yeah. Any other questions?
How are you still enjoying the Gill?
Oh, it's great. It's better than ever.
Yeah. Do you ever pick up your Bush? Do you still have it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great mandolin, but it's definitely been relegated to backup mandolin status. I'm not really one that like messes. I don't really have that many instruments, and I'm not really like a gearhead. I kind of just have my axe and I play it, and I'm lucky to have a really nice mandolin, and it's great. I just had the action raised a little bit, and I think it sounded really good these days. So I've had I've had a couple people try to buy it from me. It's definitely a nice one. So I got lucky. Yeah.
When Joe Walsh got Mandolin Orange, I can't think of his name right now.
Andrew?
When Joe bought Andrew's Gill, I guess they go back and forth where Andrew keeps saying to Joe that, maybe I should buy that back here. And Joe goes, no.
I bet he would take the lore if Andrew traded him the lore for it.
Well, yeah, there you go. Maybe, but you don't know.
I like my Gill better than several lords that I've played for sure.
And last time I was in Nashville, I took my sister and her boyfriend up to see a punk rock show in Nashville, and I took them over to Carter's and played the lures that are there. And I mean, I'm playing a Northfield F, and I really do like my Northfield better than, and I had it there comparing it to the 3 or 4 lures they have, and I recognize those ones that are there probably need to go to Steven or to Dudenbostel or someone and really be fixed up. That's what I've heard from most people
Yeah.
about those. But I like my, I got a Northfield artist that I really, really dig.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. It saved yourself 200 grand.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, yeah, I mean, part of it, it could be a setup thing. There are dud lures. I've played at least one that I would have considered a dud, though I didn't mention that to the person who had it. But and then there's the thing
Nice person.
yeah, and then there's the thing of like they do, maybe if they haven't been played very much, they might open up some more. People talk about that. I'm always a little on the fence of whether or not I think that's a thing, but a lot of people think it's a thing. And yeah, it's so it's also like I remember when I was a kid, I played this Rigel, which is like such a vastly different sounding mandolin. Like it didn't sound anything like anything Gibson or Gilchrist. I didn't like any other mandolins when I played that because it was so different. So I was so used to mine that this is so stupid. But when I was like 13 or 14, I recorded it at Grisman's studio. And on the recording, he was like, you can play, welcome to play Crusher, like meaning his like priceless lore, known as one of the best lores there is. And I didn't want to. I played my Rigel, which is, Rigel's a great maker and everything, but it's just like, man, you're being handed God's own mandolin. And I was just such a dumb little kid who thought his like robot looking mandolin was the way to go. And they're great axes, nothing against Rigel, but it was like, now I wish I had recorded evidence of myself playing this lore when I was that age, but whatever.
Well, I was lucky. I got to play Mike Marshall's and I got to play John Reichman's. And I'm not a great player, but I did have the opportunity to play them. And they're very different sounding instruments. I liked both of them. But I also think, it's like, I think my wife is the most beautiful woman in the world, and I see beautiful women all over the place, but, I'm not willing to trade her in for that. So, I'm happy with what I got.
A good analogy that some people might take issue with. But
well, my wife's not here. My wife went to set up for, I'm not going to get to watch you guys jam tonight because I'm seeing Andrew York, the classical guitarist, is
oh wow
at Florida Southern College, and my wife runs the theater. So I'm going to go hang out with Andrew and some other, and now I'm name dropping.
No, that sounds awesome, man. Well, speaking of, I might close it out here for this afternoon, and Grant and I will be hitting at 7:30, and you're all welcome to join, obviously. And sorry again about some of the internet issues. I hope that we've seen the last of those.
I really don't think it impacted anything. It didn't take away from the things. It would come and it would go away within a minute or so. At least on my end, it didn't seem like it messed anything up. Although I forget who said it. It was perfect. Someone asked a question and you were like, well, the answer of where we come from is,
and then it was just,
and then it was dead air. And it's like, I can't remember who said it, but it really, you were going to give a great answer to something and we got nothing. That was funny though.
It is. Yeah. It can be funny too, when you're playing something kind of frenetic, some fast bluegrass, and then it glitches out on top of that. I've seen that happen. And then it's just the most crazy sounding chaos you've ever heard.
Hey, Corey, or I meant, not Corey, Jacob, is the concert?
Us. That means a lot.
I think you were the one that did the invitation. Is the concert recorded?
Yeah. I'll be, I'll upload it with the rest of the Zoom videos. Yeah.
And yeah, Corey, what year is your fern?
1995. I was born in Helena, Montana. This was made in Bozeman, Montana, a year later and a couple hundred miles away.
Wow, that's cool.
Jacob, quick question for you. I know we're wrapping up. Do you have another minute?
Of course, yeah.
Hey, man. So, I'm pretty new to this whole thing. I've been playing mandolin maybe about 5 years. I'm 26 years old. I'm in the process of putting my first band together. I'm playing with a lot of people in the Washington, D.C. area, get myself out there. having a blast and was just wondering, do you have any tips for someone, you know, trying to start gigging basically, and where do you go?
Yeah, great question. I you know, I would say, like, you know, as someone that's, you know, made a living playing music, and that's really all I've done. I worked at a hot dog stand for 4 months in high school, but other than that, it's been, you know, even from when I started when I was like 9, I was gigging. I was gigging like in churches and stuff then. But anyhow, I would say the only, like, you know, way to get gigs, and the only way to have, certainly the only way to have job security, which is something I think about at this point. I'm 34. I wouldn't say I have job security by any means, but it's being part of a scene, because it's all about, you know, people knowing your name and word of mouth. And, you know, for me, I make a living playing with people I've played with my whole life. You know, like Alex Hargraves, and we've known each other for like over 20 years already. And, you know, and other people, you know, bunch of people that I went to college with, I gig with. So that's now 15 years. All that to say, like, being part of a scene. So I would say, you know, immerse yourself in whatever scene you have, whatever that is. Just go to everything. You know, if you want to play, you know, if make a living through gigging, or just gig a lot for its own sake, you know, go to every jam, get together with everybody you know to play as much as possible. And then anytime you do get a gig, you know, obviously play as well as you can. That kind of goes without saying. But also, like, you know, as someone, I call people for gigs too. You know, I have my own band, and at the end of the day, a lot of my friends can play their asses off, and a lot of times it comes down to how easy are they to travel with, and like how easy is it to communicate with them. So it's like all these other things, you know, which, you know, I sound kind of like a grandpa saying it, but they really, unless you're like Mark O'Connor level chops, not to say he's, you know, not also professional, but there maybe are a few people with transcendent level chops that continue to get gigs, you know, even if they were like, you know, Alex Hargraves happens to be the nicest guy in the world, but if Alex was a dick, he might still have gigs because he's that good. But for the most part, people aren't that good. And as someone who calls people for gigs, I'll take the guy that's really good and is easy to be around over the guy that's like a prodigy virtuoso who's, you know, cocky and hard to be around. So, you know, that's a big thing. I think just being a nice person and easy to hang out with, and all that is oh, did I lose you? Oh shoot. I'm sorry. Who asked the question? Oh, looks like he fell off. Hey, Sam, are you back?
Sorry, my iPad died. I heard everything you said.
Okay,
Easy going person, absolutely.
Well, yeah, and so I would just say take advantage of every playing situation you have, you know, and, you know, it might, for you, it's not going to be the same as someone who's done it for 20 years already. But so take, you know, advantage. But, you know, 6 years, do you say 6 years, 5, 6 years you've been doing it?
I've been playing guitar for over a decade, but yeah, mandolin, 5 or 6 years, but already I'm a better mandolinist than guitar player.
Okay.
I love it.
In a lot of ways, it's easier to get gigs on mandolin, I will say, especially if you're any good. It's easy. I only say that because I think there's so many good guitar players that, you know, there's more gigs that need a guitar. But if you're able to be a, you know, a passable mandolinist and a good mandolinist and so on and so forth, I've found it actually easier to get gigs. I think. I can't really know because I, you know, didn't dedicate myself to guitar, but I'd say being an anomaly has helped me, being like someone who can play jazz on the mandolin and stuff like that. So all that to say, in some ways, I think it's easier on the mandolin to make a living. But, you know, other than just like take advantage of every opportunity you have to gig and play with people and play as well as you can and be as nice as you can and show up on time. Honestly, that's all I would really say. I mean, you know, and then, you know, be grateful for the whatever playing opportunities you have and like build out from there, you know. And I still do this in New York because there's so many amazing musicians. Every day I can meet incredible players that I've never met before. Maybe not within Bluegrass, there's, you know, it's a smaller scene, but when it comes to like jazz musicians and every classical musicians, the city, it's like infinite. So I still think in those terms, you know, of like making connections, but it's not necessarily just for a professional sake. It's for like that's why I live here, is because there's so many great players that I can play with someone new every day, and be blown away by them. So, you know, every show you go to, you know, you have the opportunity to also meet maybe some more musicians there. And at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, there's no I don't think there's any secret to it. It kind of just comes down to every chance you get to play, every chance you get to practice, and every chance you get to just show that you're a nice person and easy to be around. Obviously, that's a good thing to do regardless, but yeah.
A lot of good life lessons there, Jacob. Thank you so much. That's
Yeah.
great advice. And
I wish I
DC,
had-
DC, Virginia has an amazing scene. I'm, getting out and finding people are, people are hitting me up to play, and it's fun. I'm
Awesome.
really enjoying this process. Great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, DC is, historically a great bluegrass scene, between the Seldom scene and Red Allen. I think he was DC, and Buzz Busby, and a bunch of, I think Red Allen was DC. Birchmere, that venue. I've actually never been to the Birchmere. I was just talking to the guy who owns it about trying to do something there, but
You should come. I just was there a couple of weeks ago for Sierra Hall, who I take her artist works classes with, and she's just
nice.
So it was fun seeing her there.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing, too, to remember. You seem like you got a really good attitude about things already, but like, I think about this with some of my friends that have really amazing solo careers already, like Sierra and Sarah Jarose and a bunch of others, honestly. And I'm really happy with the musical things I get to do, but I started my own band recently compared to them, I should say. So part of what I tell myself is like, and not to say I'll ever catch up with Sarah Jarose. I don't plan on that happening, but like, she literally started her like career under her own name at like 16 and has been hitting it, maybe even younger. It has, and I knew her back then. Has been hitting it hard since then. So part of it is like time spent in the game is a huge thing, And so I tell myself like, maybe I'll reevaluate when I've had a band for 20 years, which she has almost. So that's something to remember too, is like, just time spent in the game is a huge thing. Yeah.
Hey, better late than never. 20 years from now, I'll be out there with you, man. It's cool to be.
Totally. Yeah, before that, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, pleasure working with you all, and hopefully I'll see you some tonight. If not, you'll get to see me and Grant an uploaded version of us playing a Zoom concert to nobody, which I promise we will do regardless. Thanks for everything, guys.
See you tomorrow.
Yep. See you soon.
Thanks so
Tonight,
much.
Tom. Tonight. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you.